Sir-Fix-Alot here, and we are looking at a 2.7 liter engine in a Porsche 911. I'll show you three spots where we are leaking oil. Let's go underneath. So you're looking at the bottom side of the engine right now. There's essentially three spots where we're finding we have a leak. One is this through bolt here. It's 2.7 magnesium case, and they tend to move around a little bit, let's say. So we're going to try to address that by putting some sealant actually behind it. Not a whole lot you can do as far as tightening, but we'll see. The other area is cylinder heads themselves. One or two of them have a tiny bit of oil coming from them. You can kind of see that from the base. It's not actually coming from this oil return tube here. It's actually coming from the cylinder head. So we're going to take the valve covers off and torque down the cylinder heads as well as the cam housing to follow. Third area is actually on the other side. So we're going to move over to the other side. Sorry about that. Move some things around. And we actually have leakage, a little bit of weepage coming out of the reverse switch on the transmission. You can kind of see it's a little bit wet. Try to get a little bit closer here, but it's a little bit wet. We're going to go ahead and change out that unit. We're going to need to begin by draining the oil first from the tank, which is an 8mm hex or Allen, and then also from the oil pan here. You're going to need to have at least two 5-quart containers, because you're probably going to get about 4 quarts out of the reserve tank, and probably 5 quarts at least 5 quarts out of this out of the engine sump. On the left side of the motor, you can see that I've taken off the through bolt nut, and then I actually put it back on with another nut. These are the same nuts that hold on the valve covers, so you could just utilize one of those, double it up, and then you can see that by myself turning it like this, I'm actually driving the bolt back into the case a little bit further, and this allows you to get a better seat on it before you put some sealant on there and then top it off with just the final assembly bolt. So what I did was I drove the bolt in a little bit further, put a little Permatex Ultra Black on the base, and then I'll go ahead and assemble the nut and washer onto that unit. So now we're here at the reverse light switch on the transmission. Take off the cover and you'll expose 2 wires which need to be pulled, and then the whole unit can actually be pulled out utilizing a flat wrench. So just kind of gently pull out the connectors. And it really doesn't matter how they come back, so I have one out. I try to work on this second one here, maybe after drying off some of the oil. The final oil leak is in the cylinder heads, just a slight seepage, so you're going to have to remove all 4 valve covers. So the intake valve covers are up here. You're going to have to remove the spark plug wires, and then there are 6 bolts per upper valve cover. And then we move down to the lower side here. The lower valve cover's got a lot more bolts, so you're going to have to take off all those nuts and then remove the lower valve covers. Have a rag underneath, because there's going to be some residual oil on the valve covers. It's going to be dripping down as you remove them, and then that'll give you exposure to the cam cover bolts or nuts, and then also the studs or nuts for the cylinder heads. Now with the magnesium case, it's important that you take both the valve covers from the intake and exhaust side off. When you have them off, for instance, this is the intake side, make sure you take a mental picture of how this gasket is laid in here. You've got clearances for certain bolts or studs here. And then when you install a new valve cover gasket set like this one here, you'll know which orientation you're supposed to have. Generally, the paper gaskets without the beading are for the intake side, and then there's a beaded gasket that has a bead of silicone that is for the exhaust side, because that's the one that's most prone to leakage. So this would be a good time to adjust your valves. That's covered in another procedure. I won't do that at this time because I had adjusted these valves earlier. And then we're going to take off the gasket sets on both upper and lower banks, and then I will show you how to torque down the cylinder heads. Now on the lower right hand side of the engine, with the valve covers off, we're going to go ahead and tighten up the cylinder head bolts, and those are 10mm Allens, and they are located, 6 of them, in these holes here. So you've got one on the outer edge here, 2 in each of these, and 1 in the other outer edge. And essentially you set up your torque wrench and go to 25 foot-pounds as the final spec. What you'll want to do is go in increments, at least go 3 times over on the head itself, so 20, 22, and 25. So you go across here and do 20, do the upper left hand bank, which is the intake, 20 across there, upper right hand bank, and then lower left hand bank, and then come back and do 22 and a half, and then go through the whole engine, and then back over here again for another round at 25, which is the final spec. After you've completed that, in the 2.7 engine, the cam towers then need to be torqued down 18 foot-pounds, and there's 6 bolts total, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then there's 6 on the intake side. Same thing, I would come up at like 14, 16, and then 18. Then once you're done with that, going crosswise on the engine, put on your valve covers, and then fill it up with oil, check for leaks. And there you have it. That's taking care of the 3 areas that we had oil leaks on this 2.7.